Welcome back to our Pictures YouTube channel. Today's class are going to be learning how to make this beautiful corporate dress with yoke. Okay, is that this shirt yoke, a standard collar, and it has this beautiful cold shoulder sleeve with this rope. We're going to be learning how to make all of this in this tutorial, and it's very simple and beginner friendly. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. To make this, I have already drafted my basic bodies. This is the front, so the neck width I'm working with is 2.75 for the width, and then the depth is 3 inches for the front, and then for the back the neck width is the same 2.75, and then the depth is 1 inch for the back. So this is my zipper allowance for the back, and this is my dart. So I'm going to be working with this regular waist dart. You can also work with a bustier if that is what you want. Okay, so this is my chest line where I also have my armhole, and then I took my bust measurement here. Okay, and here I took my waist measurement, and then I already added 1 inch allowance to this pattern, so my allowance is sorted. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to work on my yoke. So for the yoke, depending on how deep you want your yoke to be, it can be on this chest line. Remember, we're going to be replacing it with a fabric, so it's not going to be exposing anything. You can go as deep as you want, but for me, I think I'm just going to go a little bit above this chest line, or I can just make it on my chest line as well. So that's for the depth of my yoke. And then this is going to be a cold shoulder sleeve, so I'm going to measure the part that my yoke is going to take up from my armhole. So now from this part of the armhole, I'm just going to take my tape now, and then I'm going to measure around. So like I said, you can measure 45 inches, or you can just measure what you have here and then divide it by 2. So for me, I think around 4 inches is fine. So from there now, I'm going to take my ruler and then connect from here to where the depth is going to be. So this is going to be a little bit deep, a deep V yoke. Remember, I said the depth of my yoke is going to be on my chest line, which is here. You can have yours anywhere you want. So now I'm connecting it like this, and this is what I'm going to have. So this is going to be my yoke for the front. So now for the front, remember, this is like a shirt. Okay, the yoke has like a shirt illusion, which means we need to add button allowance here. So add button allowance. I'm writing it so that I don't forget when I'm transferring this to my fabric. So when I want to cut out the yoke on my fabric, I'm going to measure around 2 inches for my placket. Before I'll leave 2 inches for my placket before I place this yoke, so that I can cut it together. That's why I'm writing it there. So for the back as well, to create my back yoke, I'm going to measure to see where I took for my front, which is here. So for the back yoke, you can make it straight like this, or you can just let it get to your chest line, which is here. So this is my chest line here. I can see it from here. So I'm just using my ruler to draw out the chest line as the guide. Okay, so this is my chest line for the back. So for your back yoke, you can just make it straight here like this, or you can just make it in form of a U shape to get to your chest line as well. Whichever one is fine. So here I'm doing the same thing for my back, and this is going to be the yoke for the back. So the yoke for the back is just going to have a zipper so that I can wear this easily, so I don't need to add any allowance to this. So I'm just going to make it my back yoke and front yoke. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut this out, and then I'll go ahead and cut it out on my fabric. So when I cut this on my fabric, I'm going to bring it back for us to see what this looks like. Okay, so this is my back, and again I'm working with just a regular waist dart for the back as well. Okay, so I have gone ahead to cut it on my fabric. So this is the back, and you can see that I added allowance to join my yoke on the upper part. This is the front as well, and then when you're cutting the front, you make sure it is on fold, okay, for the lower part, and then I added allowance. So for the yoke, this is my front yoke, and then I added my 2 inch button allowance. You can have 2.5 inches. It's just a button illusion, but you can open it or close it, but I think I'm just going to sew mine close. So that is why I have this allowance before placing my pattern. And then I added allowance to join it to the yoke here as well as the upper part. And then here is my back. I added allowance to the back as well. So if you're going to line your yoke, you cut out your lining the same way, and then you use them to turn out each other first. Okay, so you cut out your lining this exact same way and use them to turn out each other first before you sew. But I'm not fixing lining to this, so what I'm going to do now is just to fold my button allowance. So I'm going to fold in a little bit of this first before I fold to where my allowance stops. Remember, this is where the allowance stops. The allowance stops here. Okay, so it stops here, the 2 inches stops there. So now this I'm going to fold it a little bit first, and then from here I'm going to fold to stop where this allowance stop. So I'll do the same thing for the other side as well. So after folding like that, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and then I'm going to run a stitch all the way down. Okay, I'll fold this like this, and then I'm going to run a stitch to hold it in place, and then I will do the same thing for this other side as well. I'll fold it a little bit and then fold to where my allowance stops so that they can lap on each other like this. Okay, so after that, now I'm going to sew it down, and then I'm going to sew it to my lower part. So I'm going to take it in bits. I'll create this button placket first, and then I'll bring it back for us to continue. So I'm gone ahead to sew them, as you can see. So all I just need to do is to lay them on each other. Now you can hold it with a pin, and if you want to sew it close, you just need to sew it close. But if you want to fix a button so that I can open or close it, you just hold with a pin tentatively. So now I'm going to bring in my front bodies, and then I'll remove the pin so that I can sew the yoke back to the main body. So now at this point, if you are fixing lining to this as well, you need to cut your lining the exact same way you have cut this main body so that you can use them to turn out each other. So now all I just need now is to flip this now and sew your bodies to your lining like this, and then you hold the dart. So the same thing that I'm doing here, I'm going to do the same thing to the back as well. So I'm going to sew the back yoke to the front yoke, and remember there's a zipper passing through the back, so it means the back is 2 separate pieces. So I'll remove the pin, I'll remove the pattern as well, and then I'll go ahead now and sew my yoke separately to the back. So I'll do this now and bring it back to show us what we have. I've sewn the yoke to the main bodies, as you can see. So this is the front, and this is my button placket. So this is the front and this is the back. So after that, I hemmed the armhole area. Remember I said it's a cold shoulder sleeve, so this part is going to be sleeveless and you don't want it rough. So if you used a lining for yours, you must have turned it out with your lining so that it's going to be neat. So after doing that, I sewed the shoulder together, and then I sew it together on the side seam as well. So let me just turn it like this so that we can see it well. So after joining my yoke, so this is the back yoke joined to the back, and then this is the front yoke joined as well. You need to notch it so that it can relax well for you, and you went ahead to sew it together on the shoulder. Okay, so please, if you're hemming yours, just use, if you're not using a line, just use a bias to hem it. I just folded mine inward because this is a tutorial. So use a bias to turn it out, or better to just use a lining to turn everything out so that you can have something neat. So here is my dart now also taken, and this is what it is looking like. Now I'm going to move to, okay, so the sleeve is a puff sleeve, but I'm going to use slash and spread method to introduce my volume. You can also cut a straight sleeve, but that means that the upper part have to be gathered for it to return back to its original size. I don't want to gather it on the upper part, that's why I'm using this method. So I'm going to cut my off shoulder sleeve. Remember, it's a cold shoulder, which means the upper part of the sleeve is going to be opened. So you're going to use your round armhole measurement. So in my case, my round armhole measurement is 9 inches. So I'll mark my 9 inches like this, and that's half of my armhole including allowance. That's 9 inches. Okay, so this is my round armhole measurement. So in order to create my the the coat part, you can measure your army side just round where that part is going to be, or you just, I'm going to be using 4.5 inches including allowance, and then I'm going to measure 3.5 inches for my calf height, or you just bring in that part where you're going to be sewing it. So that part that is just the main fabric. Okay, so you can see, so once I have this like this, the rest is just going to be the allowance for me. So it's either you do it like this, you remember this is the part that is going to be the cold shoulder that will be exposed, this upper part. I remember we went down by 4 inches, that's why I did 4.5 inches here. So here I'm just going to complete it like this, and then I can cut this out. So this is a half scale bodice, it means it's just half of the sleeve. So you can work with the full scale as well. I'm using this half scale. I just need to note that this part have to be on fold when I'm cutting it on my main fabric. So now to create my slash and spread, I'm going to introduce some slash lines. I'm not going to make it too much, so I just have about 4. You can see that I did not shape the hem of the sleeve because it's not going to be a fitted sleeve. So once you cut it like that, I'm going to, once you make your style lines, I'm going to cut it, and then I'll spread it so that I can have some volume. Okay, so I have just 3 slash lines, and then I'm going to spread like this. So spreading it means you're going to have some volume on your sleeve. So you are going to cut to the tip, but you are not going to cut completely. Okay, so I'm just going to place this on the fabric and make sure this part is on fold, and then I'll cut it out. Okay, so my fabric is on fold at this point, so you can see me matching this side to the folded point, and after matching it, I'm going to spread the rest as much as I want to, okay, depending on the volume you want. So after spreading it, now you're going to cut it like this, leaving allowance for hemming. So I have cut the lower part and I left about 1 inch allowance for hemming. Now I'm cutting the upper part, and then my arms are. So you should use a pin to hold it so that it's not going to shift when you are cutting. Just doing this because I need to quickly do this. So this is what I have now, and you can see that if you close your pattern, you will see that you have introduced some excess volume. All of these are extra. Okay, so if you want to introduce more, you just need to spread more. So now this is what it looks like. You can see that it looks like a flare now. So this is the upper part that is going to be exposed. So I'm going to be turning this part with a bias, and then here I'm going to create like a casing, a like 1/2 inch casing, and then I'm going to pass elastic around it. So the elastic is what I'm going to use to gather this back to fit my round sleeve measurement. So you cut 2 of this. So it depends on what you want. This has like a knot, a rope to tie, so you can actually create like a rope and use that to hem it to the middle. You use another one to hem it so that the leftover is going to just dangle like this, and you can tie it, or you can just hem it and then you create one long rope and tie it in the middle and tack it in the middle here, so that you can use that to tie it. Whichever one you want to work with is fine. So now I'll go and hem this on the lower part, do the same thing for the upper part, and then I'm going to sew it to my bodies that I already created here. So because this is a cold shoulder, you can actually leave your shoulder measurement like this, but I want it to have like an alter neck effect. So to do this, I'm bringing my bodies together again. Okay, so you can actually do this on your pattern, but I just want us to see different designs that we can have. That's why I left my pattern the way it is. So to create this slightly off shoulder pattern that I want, I'm going to come in from this side. Remember, this is my neckline side of my shoulder. I'm going to come in by around 1 to 1.5 inches, depending on how open you want it to be on your shoulder. And then using a slightly curved part, I'm going to link it to my armhole. Okay, but for now I'm just going to use my free hand. So you link it to your armhole like this, and then you bring in your scissors and then cut off this part. So the shoulder is not going to be as wide as it was earlier. So now this is what my shoulder looks like. You can see that it's a bit inwards now. So now I'll go and sew my sleeve to the armhole, the lower part, and then I'll use my bias to cover this upper part so that it can be neat as well. So I have fixed the sleeve. Okay, so I just fixed one side. Okay, so this is the upper part. You can see I later used my band to hem it inwards, so you can see the upper part of the sleeve. I just used the band to hem it, so now I can tie it like this. So if you don't want to use your band, all you just need to do is to use your bias to turn it in, and then you just tack a band here so that you can use that to tie it, whichever one is fine. And this is the hem. I've also hemmed it inwards so that I can pass my elastic. So here I'm going to bring in my elastic, and then I'll pass it all around so that I can gather the hem, because the hem is very wide now, it's like a flare. So now I'm using this elastic to control it back to my actual round sleeve measurement. So I have fixed the elastic now. I can see that the hem now is looking smaller, and this is what it looks like. So I just folded in this upper part so that it can be neat as well. But if this were to be an actual dress, you use your bias to turn it so that it's going to give you something neater. So now this is what it looks like. So on the collar, finally I measured what I have on my neckline, and I used that to draft a standard collar. So you can see the collar. I have a detailed tutorial on how to draft a collar already. So this is the back, and this is the place where my zipper is going to go through, and this is the front of the collar. So I'm going to go ahead now and iron it very neatly, and then fix my button and create my button hole on my placket area, and this is ready. So the same sleeve that you have created here, you put on the other side as well. So we'll take this to the mannequin so that we can see a better view of what it looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You can see my standard collar here, and this is my button placket. I already fixed my buttons to them, and this is the yoke. So you can see the style line of the yoke. I can see how lovely this is looking. So this is my cold shoulder. You can see my halter neck here. I went in by 1.5 inches to create this halter neck. So you can see that my shoulder did not get to the edge of the shoulder point. And then this is my sleeve. So here I have my tie, my rope to tie the sleeve. So I made it to cover I used it as a bias, in form of a bias, to cover the edges of my sleeve. But if you don't want to use your band as like a bias, you can just turn your sleeve with a bias, and then you make a rope and then tack it at this center point so that you can tie it anyhow you want. And this is the rubber, the elastic rubber that we fixed on the sleeve to make it puffy. So the same thing I did here, you just replicate it on the other sleeve, and this is the full dress looks like. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.